What if I told you that just a few years ago, I could barely speak a complete sentence in English? What if I told you that I was afraid of speaking English in front of people because I thought they would laugh at me? And what if I told you that in only 5 months, my life changed completely because of one decision? Today, I want to share a true story with you. This is not just a story about learning English. It is a story about fear. It is a story about failure. It is a story about confidence. And most importantly, it is a story about transformation. So, if you are struggling with English, if you think your English is not good enough, if you feel nervous whenever you try to speak, then stay with me until the end, because this story might change the way you think about learning English forever. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Big Dream. My name is Alex. I grew up in a small town where very few people spoke English. In school, I studied English for many years. I learned grammar rules. I memorized vocabulary lists. I passed exams. But there was one problem. I couldn't actually speak English. Whenever someone asked me a simple question in English, my mind became blank. The words disappeared. The grammar rules disappeared. Everything disappeared. I knew English in theory, but I couldn't use it in real life. Still, I had a dream. I wanted to work internationally. I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet people from different countries. Most importantly, I wanted a better future. One evening, while scrolling through job opportunities online, I saw something that caught my attention. A company in London was hiring international workers. The salary was good. The opportunities were amazing. And for the first time in my life, I thought, what if I try? At first, it sounded impossible. London? England? A completely different country? How could someone like me survive there? But the dream wouldn't leave my mind. Day after day, I kept thinking about it. Finally, I submitted my application. Then, I waited, and waited, and waited. Weeks later, an email arrived. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The company wanted to interview me. I was excited, but I was also terrified, because the interview would be in English. Chapter 2. The Humiliating Interview. The interview day arrived. I sat in front of my computer. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it. The interviewer smiled and said, "Tell me about yourself." Such a simple question. But for me, it felt impossible. I knew the answer in my own language. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. But when I tried to speak English, the words came out slowly. Broken, awkward, embarrassing. I made grammar mistakes. I forgot vocabulary. I repeated myself again and again. After the interview ended, I felt terrible. I was convinced I had failed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every mistake in my mind. Every wrong sentence, every awkward pause, every moment of embarrassment. I told myself, maybe English is not for me. Maybe I wasn't talented enough. Maybe I would never become fluent. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever thought that everyone else learns faster than you? Have you ever believed that you are simply not good at languages? If yes, Then listen carefully, because what happened next changed everything. 3 days later, another email arrived. I opened it, and to my surprise, I got the job. I couldn't believe it. The company believed I had potential, and suddenly, my dream became reality. I was moving to London. Chapter 3. The Shock of Reality. A few weeks later, I landed in London. Everything felt exciting. The streets, the buildings, the people, the atmosphere. I felt like I was living inside a movie. But the excitement lasted only a few hours. Then reality hit me. Hard? At the airport, people spoke so fast that I could barely understand them. At restaurants, I struggled to order food. At stores, I often smiled and nodded even when I didn't fully understand what people were saying. Sometimes, I would leave a conversation feeling completely confused. One day, a cashier asked me a simple question. I couldn't understand a single word. The line behind me grew longer. People were waiting. I felt embarrassed. My face became red. I wanted to disappear. That evening, I returned to my apartment, feeling defeated. For the first time, I wondered if I had made a mistake by coming to London. Everything seemed difficult. Everything seemed impossible. But then I realized something important. I had two choices. I could give up, or I could fight. And that night, I made a decision. I would learn English no matter what it took. No excuses. No complaints. No quitting. Only progress. Even if the progress was small. Even if it was slow. I would keep moving forward. That decision became the turning point of my life. Chapter 4. The Secret That Changed Everything. Most people think learning English is about studying more grammar. That was exactly what I believed. And that belief was holding me back. One day, while searching online, I discovered something surprising. Children do not learn language by memorizing grammar books. They learn through listening, through stories, through repetition, through real communication. That realization changed my entire approach. Instead of spending hours studying complicated grammar rules, I started listening to English every single day. Stories, podcasts, conversations, audiobooks, movies, anything I could find. At first, I understood only 20%, sometimes even less. But I continued listening every day, without fail, and slowly something incredible started happening. Words that once seemed difficult became familiar. Sentences started making sense. My ears began adapting to English. For the first time, I wasn't translating everything in my head. I was beginning to think in English. And that was the moment when my real progress started. But the biggest challenge was still waiting for me. Speaking. And trust me, that challenge was about to teach me one of the most important lessons of my life. Chapter 5. My Biggest Fear. Listening was helping me. Every day I understood a little more. Every week I felt a little stronger. But there was still one problem. I was afraid to speak, and not just a little afraid. I was terrified. Whenever I wanted to speak English, my mind filled with questions. What if I make a mistake? What if people laugh at me? What if they don't understand me? What if I sound stupid? These thoughts followed me everywhere. At work, at restaurants, on the bus, even when I practiced alone. One afternoon, I was sitting in a small coffee shop near my apartment. I ordered a cup of coffee and sat near the window. While drinking my coffee, I noticed something interesting. Two foreign tourists were talking to a local Londoner. Their English wasn't perfect. They made grammar mistakes. They pronounced some words incorrectly, but something surprised me. Nobody laughed at them. Nobody judged them. The conversation continued normally. Everyone understood each other. And suddenly, I realized something powerful. People don't care about your mistakes as much as you think they do. Most people are too busy thinking about themselves. They aren't analyzing every word you say. They aren't waiting for you to fail. In fact, most people appreciate your effort. That realization gave me courage. For the first time, I decided to stop waiting for perfect English. I decided to start speaking with imperfect English. And that decision changed everything. Chapter 6. The Embarrassing Mistake. The next day, I challenged myself. I promised that I would start at least one conversation in English every day. No excuses. No matter how nervous I felt. The first few conversations were difficult. Very difficult. Sometimes I spoke too slowly. Sometimes I forgot simple words. Sometimes I mixed up tenses. But then something happened that I will never forget. One morning, a colleague invited me to lunch. We were talking about food. I wanted to say, "I am full," but instead, I accidentally said, "I am pregnant." For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then, everyone started laughing. At first, I wanted the ground to open and swallow me. I felt embarrassed. I wanted to disappear. But then, something unexpected happened. I started laughing too. The mistake was funny, and nobody was making fun of me. They were simply enjoying the moment. That day taught me a lesson I still remember. Mistakes are not your enemies. Mistakes are your teachers. Every mistake shows you what to improve. Every mistake makes you stronger. Every mistake brings you one step closer to fluency. From that day onward, I stopped being afraid of mistakes. I welcomed them because I knew they were helping me grow. Chapter 7. The 30-Day Challenge. A few weeks later, I created a personal challenge. For the next 30 days, I would do 5 things every single day. No exceptions. No breaks. No excuses. First, I listened to English for at least 1 hour. Second, I learned 10 new words. Third, I read English stories. Fourth, I spoke English every day. And fifth, I wrote a short journal in English before sleeping. At first, the challenge felt difficult. Some days, I was tired. Some days, I was busy. Some days, I didn't feel motivated. But I continued anyway. Because motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Many people wait until they feel motivated. Successful learners don't. They practice even when they don't feel like it. That was my secret. I wasn't smarter than everyone else. I wasn't more talented. I was simply consistent. Day after day, week after week, month after month, and consistency started producing results. Chapter 8. The First Big Win. Around 2 months after arriving in London, something amazing happened. I was riding the underground train to work. Normally, I listened to English conversations without understanding everything. But on that particular day, I suddenly realized something. I could understand almost the entire conversation happening near me. Not every word, but enough to follow the discussion. For a moment, I couldn't believe it. The same language that once sounded like noise was now becoming meaningful. The same language that once frightened me was becoming familiar. I felt excited. I felt proud. I felt hopeful. That small victory gave me enormous confidence, because it proved something important. Progress is happening even when you can't see it. Every hour of listening had mattered. Every page I had read had mattered. Every conversation had mattered. Even the mistakes had mattered. The results were finally appearing. And once I saw that progress, I became even more determined. Chapter 9. The Friend Who Changed My Life. One evening after work, I attended a language exchange event. People from different countries gathered to practice English together. At first, I stood quietly in a corner. I felt nervous again. What if my English wasn't good enough? What if I embarrassed myself? Then a friendly man walked over and introduced himself. His name was David. He was born in England, but unlike many people, he spoke slowly and patiently. We started talking. The conversation lasted only 10 minutes, but those 10 minutes changed everything. David gave me advice I will never forget. He said, "Don't try to sound perfect. Try to communicate." Such a simple sentence, but it completely changed my mindset. Until then, I had been chasing perfection. I wanted every sentence to be perfect, every word to be perfect, every pronunciation to be perfect. But perfection was slowing me down. Communication was the real goal. From that day onward, I focused less on perfection and more on expressing my ideas. And suddenly, speaking became much easier because I stopped fighting the language. I started using it. Chapter 10. The moment I knew I was changing. 3 months after moving to London, I experienced something incredible. One night, I had a dream. And in that dream, people were speaking English, not my native language, English. When I woke up, I couldn't stop smiling. It may sound like a small thing, but for language learners, it is a powerful sign. It means your brain is becoming comfortable with the language. It means English is becoming part of your daily life. For the first time, I felt that fluency was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming a reality. But the biggest test of all was still ahead. A test that would show me how far I had truly come. And that test arrived unexpectedly one Monday morning. Chapter 11. The Test I Never Expected. It was a normal Monday morning. I arrived at work as usual. I grabbed a cup of coffee, checked my emails, and prepared for the day. Everything seemed ordinary. Then my manager walked toward my desk. He looked serious. For a moment, I thought I had done something wrong. My heart started beating faster. He stopped beside me and said, "Alex, we have an important meeting this afternoon." I nodded. Then he added, "And I want you to present the project." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. Present? Me? In English? In front of everyone? I felt a wave of panic. There would be managers, team leaders, experienced professionals, native English speakers, people with years of experience, and somehow I was supposed to stand in front of all of them and speak English confidently. The old Alex would have said no. The old Alex would have looked for an excuse. The old Alex would have tried to escape, but something inside me had changed. I was still afraid. But this time, I decided not to run. I accepted the challenge. Chapter 12. The Longest Day. The hours before the meeting felt endless. I practiced my presentation again and again. I repeated difficult sentences. I checked my pronunciation. I imagined possible questions. Every time I finished practicing, I discovered another mistake, another weakness, another reason to feel nervous. By lunchtime, I was exhausted. I could barely eat. My stomach was full of anxiety. The clock continued moving, slowly, painfully. Finally, the meeting began. People entered the conference room, one by one. The room became crowded. The atmosphere felt serious, professional, important. I sat quietly, waiting for my turn. Then I heard my manager say, "Alex, the floor is yours." That was it. The moment had arrived. Chapter 16. The Breakthrough. I stood up. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. For the first few seconds, my voice sounded nervous. But then something unexpected happened. I focused on the message. Not the grammar, not the pronunciation, not the mistakes. The message. I remembered David's advice. But the truth is much simpler. I improved because of small actions. Every day, repeated consistently, one story, one conversation, one page, one podcast, one mistake, one lesson. Small actions may seem insignificant, but over time, they become powerful. Imagine improving just 1% every day. At first, the change is invisible, but after weeks and months, the results become extraordinary. That is exactly what happened to me. I wasn't transformed overnight. I improved gradually, until one day I looked back and realized how far I had come. Chapter 16. The day everything felt different. Around 4 months after arriving in London, I noticed something strange. I was walking through a busy shopping center. People were talking around me. Announcements were playing through speakers. Music was playing in stores. Normally, all those sounds would have blended together, but now I could understand almost everything. Without effort, without translating, without stopping to think. For a moment, I stood still. I simply listened and smiled, because I realized that English was no longer foreign to me. It had become familiar, natural, comfortable. The language that once frightened me had become part of my daily life, and that realization felt incredible. But there was still one final lesson waiting for me. A lesson that would completely change the way I viewed language learning forever. And it happened during my 5th month in London. Chapter 17. The Life-Changing Conversation. It was a cool evening during my 5th month in London. The sun was setting. The streets were busy. People were hurrying home after work. As I walked through a small park near my apartment, I noticed an elderly man sitting alone on a bench. He looked friendly. I smiled. He smiled back. Then he said, "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" A few months earlier, I might have simply nodded and walked away. But this time, I stopped, and we started talking. At first, it was just small talk. The weather, the city, daily life. But gradually, the conversation became deeper. He asked me where I was from, why I had moved to London, how I was adjusting to life there. And for nearly an hour, we talked. Completely in English. Naturally. Comfortably. Without fear. Without translating in my head, without searching desperately for words. As I walked home that evening, I suddenly realized something. 5 months earlier, a conversation like that would have been impossible. Absolutely impossible. Yet now it had happened effortlessly. That was the moment I truly understood how much I had changed. Chapter 18. The Real Secret. Many people think my success happened because I learned thousands of words. Others think it happened because I studied grammar. Some believe I was naturally talented. But none of those things were the real reason. The real secret was much simpler. I refused to quit. That's it. There were days when I felt frustrated. Days when I felt stupid. Days when I thought I wasn't improving. Days when I wanted to give up. But I kept going. And that's what separates successful learners from unsuccessful learners. Not talent. Not intelligence. Not luck. Persistence. The willingness to continue, even when progress feels invisible, because progress is often happening beneath the surface, just like a seed growing underground. For weeks, you see nothing. Then, one day, the plant appears. Language learning works the same way. You don't always see the improvement immediately, but every lesson matters. Every page matters. Every conversation matters. Every minute of practice matters. Even when it doesn't feel like it. Chapter 19. The Lesson I Wish I Knew Earlier. If I could travel back in time and meet the version of myself who had just arrived in London, I would tell him one thing. I would say, stop worrying about being perfect. For years, perfection slowed me down. I wanted perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, perfect vocabulary, perfect sentences. But perfection is a trap, because while you're waiting to become perfect, you're not practicing. You're not growing. 2. You're not improving. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is communication. Think about children. They make mistakes constantly. Yet, they become fluent. Why? Because they are not afraid of making mistakes. They focus on communication. They focus on expressing themselves. They focus on expressing themselves. That is exactly what language learners should do. Speak, listen, read, practice, repeat, and allow yourself to be imperfect, because every fluent speaker was once a beginner. Every expert was once confused. Every confident speaker once felt nervous. Chapter 20. The day I called home. One evening, I called my family back home. We talked about life, work, friends, London. Then my father asked me something unexpected. He said, "Can you say something in English for us?" I laughed. Then I started speaking. I talked for several minutes, confidently, naturally. When I finished, there was silence. A few seconds later, my father said, "I'm proud of you." Those simple words touched my heart. Because he knew how difficult the journey had been. He knew the fears I had faced. He knew the struggles, the doubts, the failures. And in that moment, I realized something important. Learning English had given me much more than a language. It had given me confidence, discipline, patience, courage, a completely new version of myself. Final message to the viewers. And now, before this story ends, I want to speak directly to you. Yes, you, the person watching this video. Maybe you are struggling with English right now. Maybe you feel embarrassed when speaking. Maybe you think your progress is too slow. Maybe you believe fluency is impossible for you. But let me tell you something. I once felt exactly the same way. I wasn't special. I wasn't a genius. I wasn't naturally gifted. I was simply someone who decided not to quit. And if I can do it, you can do it too. Your English does not need to be perfect today. You only need to be better than yesterday. One new word, one new sentence, one new conversation, one small step, taken every day. That is how fluency is built. Not in a single week, not through magic, but through consistent effort. So promise yourself something today. Don't give up. Keep listening. Keep reading. Keep speaking. Keep learning. Because 6 months from now, 1 year from now, you may look back and realize that the person you are today was only the beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story inspired you, write in the comments. I will never give up. And remember, every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker once struggled. And your success story may be closer than you think. See you in the next video. Take care. And keep learning English.